Hello everyone! Welcome to the final video in the Pokémon Orpiment series. I wanted to make a video explaining why my character designs are the way they are, since it would have disrupted the flow of the previous videos. Before I begin, why not subscribe to my channel as well as like, comment and share. All of these help out a lot, so if you like what you see, why not do that? Ring the notification bell to ensure you don't miss an upload as well. Jamie is just a Scottish-inspired Pokémon protagonist with customization options. The reason I made a unisex avatar where you can just pick the pronouns was for a few reasons. One was that I felt like it wasn't strictly necessary for there to be multiple options. In the age of customization, there could just be a pronouns option too. And you can set your skin tone, hairstyle, eye colour, and even clothing at the start of the game as well. What it also does is fix an issue I've had people say to me since I made the Agate Obsidian protagonists. Including a third non-binary option on top of male and female is more inclusive than not, but it does turn a binary into a trinary, which is just not what being non-binary is. One option where you curate pronouns and other aspects is a one-size-fits-all approach. I also felt that key art for the different skin tones was also a must, as some were confused why I was repping non-binary people but not black people, for example. Despite me trying to be as clear as possible that customization options were a thing, but this way people can be comfortable knowing that they are seen and they can play as something resembling themselves in a Pokemon game. The different skin tones customization also bled into aspects of Hamish's design, as he is your grandpa, and therefore would have a similar skin tone to you. Everything he is wearing from head to toe is something Scottish boomers and older would wear. I mean, boomers is in the generation, just to clarify. Essentially, whenever I felt the design wasn't working, I asked myself, what would my dad wear? Hamish's cane was purely to balance the design based on his pose. I'm not opposed to having older characters not have a cane, by the way. It just felt necessary for this particular design. The name Hamish is a variant on James, much like the name Jamie is. I thought that name connection really cemented the familial tie. His team is interesting. He picks the starter weak to yours. This is because it felt wrong to me for your loving and supportive grandfather to pick the super effective option, even if he was technically competing with you for the Pokemon League. I also decided to give him Jackaterra, Crossbury, and Hedgerow, as they are early route Pokemon, as I feel a lot of first-time Pokemon trainers end up going for what you'd usually find on Route 1. Speaking of, I really like the idea of your rival being your grandpa going on his first journey. It conveys the theme of never being too old to follow your dreams, which I think is something we all need to hear. Anyways, he also has an Alakazam, since I felt like giving him a mom from Gen 1. The oldest generation, and the Abra line just felt like it fit the best. I also gave him Drampa, because Drampa is based on grandpas. Now this accidentally made an interesting narrative emerge. The starter and Crossbury are purely level up evolutions, so get the least fanfare with Hamish's storyline. But Hedgerow requires leveling up at night. Not difficult by any means, but could catch you off guard. Jackaterra needs the Dusk Stone, and stone evolutions are also a bit more restrictive. But you can still find the stone and use it. But Alakazam needs to be traded, which many people find a difficult task. So all of these made for an interesting story of Hamish learning about the different kinds of evolution methods, which I love. The cherry on top is Drampa being a single stage mon, so leading to a gag where Hamish is excited to see it evolve, even if those who know can't bear to tell him it doesn't. Much like those in the know about my Instagram and Discord server, who know how cool it is to check the links to them in my description. It's even cooler if you hit the join button or check out my Patreon. I know I've not posted many new Fakemon as I'm wrapping this series up, but trust me, I have plenty of Fakemon prepped for my next region. You'll find out in time, but even sooner if you check the links out or become a member. Now, why is the Rock-type gym leader, Jasper, the new professor? Simple. They were the only real candidate. Think about it, out of the non-villainous cast, who was the most scientist-coded? Maybe it was the paleontologist, the only other character who did science in Croneo. Upgrading anyone else would have been arbitrary, and I felt since I was doing a sequel it would be a lot more interesting to upgrade someone rather than make a new character, sort of to see the progress of these characters. Now, I did consider making Heather the new professor, but I got the feeling she wouldn't want to follow in her father's footsteps, which was a massive part of her character in Agate and Obsidian. So now Jasper dons a lab coat, along with longer hair and a longer dress. The first non-binary professor had to enter with style. Jasper is gender fluid, which means they don't have a solid sense of gender. It changes. Being a rock specialist is ironic, I know. Their appearance is intended to be quite feminine, despite without the facial hair. Non-binary people don't owe androgyny. However, I did still feel I needed to convey their fluidity somehow, and this is just a natural extension of their original appearance. Plus, it does look like 2 years have passed. The last of the player's allies is Looker. I think some people can tell what I did. There's a fan theory, or I guess just a fan observation, that Looker has a similar appearance to the 10th Doctor from Doctor Who. He's actually more likely based on Detective Zenigata from Lupin III, as he has a lot more similarities. And the manga series is very popular in Japan, unlike Doctor Who, but Doctor Who's popular in Scotland, where Croneo is based on. And it has time travel as a focal point, which fits as Croneo's legendaries have time as a theme. David Tennant, the actor who portrayed the 10th Doctor, is Scottish too, so I just leaned into this sort of theory observation thing. So Looker's redesign leans into the design of the 14th Doctor, also played by David Tennant, who was basically an older version of the 10th Doctor. Since Looker would be a tad older than when we last saw him, that made sense to me. I also liked the parallel of a sort of legacy version of a character who debuted around 2006, returning one final time before retirement. Or at least that was the idea anyways. But Looker isn't one-to-one with the 10th Doctor. He's more one-to-one with Zenigata, but still. As a result, this redesign isn't one-to-one with the 14th Doctor either. The blue coat also references his coat in Pokémon Masters EX, which is themed around his Krogunk. Yes, pretty much everything else is somewhat inspired by the 14th Doctor, but the tie is orange as a further nod to Krogunk. I just think this is really cool, thematic, and a well-executed redesign. Time for the reason Looker is here. Like most appearances, he is investigating the evil team, which in this case is Team Syndicate. Now, I'm not going to go into the logo design or general concept, but check out my Team Syndicate video if you want to see that. The designs of the grunts are essentially fancy and disciplined versions of the Team Sparkle grunts. This is kinda a reference to how the Neo Team Plasma grunts were redesigns of the old Team Plasma grunts. Since this team is in the same region, it made sense for the sort of displaced members of Team Sparkle to join this new team. As for the admins, there was an overall design theme. If you never got it until now, don't worry, it was intentionally subtle. Remember that Willy Wonka experience? You know, the one with AI marketing depicting something more magical than the empty meth lab looking warehouse filled with Oompa Loompas who were done with life, as well as the unknown, whatever that was?
What is that? It's the unknown!
Yeah, it happened in Glasgow, in Scotland. It was a popular meme in early 2024 when it was happening, which unfortunately coincided with my plans to wrap up Croneo, as I was pretty much done with everything else, including that contest, so that there was no room for people to actually submit it. But I hadn't yet gotten these admins done, who I was planning to include anyways, so I decided to base the female ones on the two Oompa Loompas, who were also played by women. Barkley and Alexi were based on the two Willy Wonka actors, as they were the head honchos anyway. Farber was based on the unknown, because I just thought that was funny, and Mirror B is, the unknown's mirror. I mean, I guess his hair's quite sparkly. There were only 5 cast members, and it was funnier to have Mirror B be the odd one out in my opinion. Also, I wanted a variety of different representatives from the series. Having 2 spin-off characters I felt would emphasize the scale even more. I picked someone from Go Rocket and someone from Ore more generally, as they were the only games not part of the main series that display a region of origin. As for the 2 main series candidates, Team Rocket would have felt like an overlap with Sierra. Because I had 6 main Team Syndicate members in total, I felt like I couldn't have Magma without Aqua, but at the same time I didn't really want to address the rivalry between the teams in this narrative. Not out of laziness, but I feel like that would have actually pulled away from the story at hand. As for Team Plasma, that's a whole can of worms I don't really want to open. At least not in this story. And Macrocosmos is just a business that is still going. And their ex-employees can't really be twisted into Syndicate members. That just felt like a bit of a stretch. And in case it needs to be said, no, Team Skull, Team Yell, and Team Star are social outcasts, not career criminals. It makes no sense for anyone from those teams to enter Team Syndicate at all. That just left Team Galactic, Team Flare, and the Aether Foundation. The latter isn't inherently evil, but does have potential since they were involved in an evil scheme, so logically some of their employees may have wanted to jump ship. Hence Faber, since it felt somewhat in character for him to do so. When I was planning this, BDSP felt too recent, so that left Team Flare, which made the timing a bit awkward considering I did not see CA coming. Team Flare's admins were literally a nameless trainer class. So as much as it would have been fun to have a character that looked a bit like Pitbull, the scientists were really my only option when it came to, characters. I'll now briefly go over each admin individually. Mabel's striped pattern was inspired by one of the Oompa Loompas. Something I mentioned in the Team Syndicate video is that she was partly chosen because her hair fit well. Celosia was also considered for this reason, but Mabel won out because she actually had a personality to work with. What tips it over in Mabel's favour is that I couldn't really separate Celosia from Bryony, so Mabel just seemed like the obvious pick. She also would likely have a tantrum over Team Flare losing, so would have the motivation to join Team Syndicate. She studies the crystals at the Zeninsula, which are the same as those on the Legendaries. This would be something needed to understand Gemporum, but also works since Megastones are somewhat similar. And Team Flare has a history of looking into the essence of a box legend. This role in the team allowed her design to have a focus, that vial with the crystals. Her team is just the Pokemon she used in X and Y with a few more arbitrary picks. Considering Gemporum is from Ultra Space, Faber was a natural fit. His dark lab coat was appropriate as he's now working for a shadier organization, and it fits the color scheme. It also fits the black costume for the aforementioned Unknown, with silvery goggles representing the silver mask. His Unknown, the Pokemon, was a reference to this, and the rest of his team were a mix of returning Mon and new picks. He's using a Rotom laptop to research the Ultra Wormholes, which he does in the way that those who didn't grow up with technology tend to do, one key at a time. Slowly. This Rotom is grey to reference PCs in Galar. Sierra's design doesn't have much to talk about either. She loosely takes inspiration from the other Oompa Loompa, and her Team Syndicate logo is in a hairpin. If you're wondering how she's able to be here when she's from a different world, I'm using the logic of transferable to main series equals set in the same world. Perhaps Pogo is a different timeline to this. I'm sure that explanation fits any deviations from headcanon that you may be experiencing. I wanted to have Sierra use some Pokemon she's known for, as well as adding some new ones as well. She's also very much known for using a Houndoom, but considering Mabel didn't have many Pokemon to begin with, I felt it was more important to have Houndoom be her ace. But since there's no set ace for the Team Go Rocket admins, I felt it was still important to have Houndoom on her team, but I switched it to Honchkrow. Any Pokemon she hasn't used, I just felt like was a good fit for her personality. Speaking of, her tough personality in Go is why she trains up new recruits in Orpiment. Mirror B, what do I need to say? His design is vaguely themed around his XD design, but more bedazzled with diamonds, since he would entirely lean into this aesthetic. He wears lipstick because it looks like he did in Colosseum. His shoes are high heels to lean into his feminine side even more. Also, his hair is now a beast ball, since Gemporum is an Ultra Beast, and it's an easier ball than most to make resemble a disco ball since he likes to dance. Finally, the Croneo couple. Yes, it's canon. So many people asked and I buckled under pressure. Barkley was given a top hat after one of the Wonka actors, and just had a fancy waistcoat with a black lab coat. He kinda gives off Mad Hatter vibes. In all honesty, his redesign is just an inverse of his old one. The artist did want to give Barkley's new design a connection to Heather's, Heather being his daughter who hates him. Her design was done first, and I'll get to it in a bit. He decided to make Barkley's footwear evoke a similar sort of vibe to Heather's. So that's neat. Alexi's vibe was taken from the other Wonka actor, the one without facial hair. Liberties were taken, but Alexi still has some style, give or take the Crocs. He's got baggy and wavy clothing, which emphasizes his flamboyance. He's also got an arrogance, and he's got a spiky grin. His personality really shines through. His team is slightly different from Agate and Obsidian, since Billy didn't fit and is on Fig's team now. Grimmsnarl was added because it's a meaner fairy type, and Galarian Rapidash, the native form of it in Croneo, is also a fairy type and psychic type, referencing his relationship with Barkley, as well as the unicorn being Scotland's national animal, which is why Barkley has it too. On to the gym leaders now, and let's start with Heather. I decided to make her a gym leader because she wanted to follow in the footsteps of her friends Brooke and Douglas, who were a gym leader and wannabe gym leader, respectively. They're part of the Elite Four now because they're strong. I decided Heather was going to be a dragon type gym leader, initially because it was the last type that didn't have a specialist in Orpiment, but she already had the dragon type Draconion on her rival team, which is now her ace. And also a dragon type punk was a cool idea to me. She also appears a little older, since it has been 2 years, and she has new piercings as a result, along with a new green streak in her hair, to match her Draconion themed design. And she's got more spikes because dragons tend to have spikes themselves, along with sharp teeth and claws. It also is quite punky. The remaining type specialists I wanted to base loosely on real people. icons who I wasn't able to represent through Fakemon. The Steel Gym leader is the least subtle. Fergus is based on Gordon Ramsay, although his hair is more brown to reference copper, along with the teal accents in his design referencing oxidized copper, along with the steel type in general. Fergus is a Scottish name, and the first two letters are how iron is represented on the periodic table. A steel type chef makes sense because of how kitchens have a lot of metal in them. His team was curated to have as many food-related steel types as possible, with his ace being the steel-type Rotom Saw because it was the only contest winner that didn't get a Titan. But at least it fit Fergus's type specialty. His apron has a Pokeball logo altered to look like a frying pan with food. Meanwhile, Hayley, whose name contains Hale, is based on Scottish singer Annie Lennox. She's originally from the city of Aberdeen and was part of Eurythmics. Their most famous song is Sweet Dreams. Hayley's design takes from the suit and general appearance of Lennox in that music video, although Hayley's suit is a cyan colour because of the ice type. The bright orange hair made a nice contrast to the suit. Her bright red lipstick also did this too. Her ace is Slumboos because it is an ice type themed around sleep. I wonder if Slumboos's sweet dreams are made of this, but who am I to disagree? The brand new Elite Four trainer is Mackenzie, specialising in the fighting type. Mackenzie's inspiration is the most loose, as I doubt famed Scottish poet Robert Burns was an any pronouns user. Mackenzie only is because I didn't know what pronouns to give them, even after their design was finished. Sure, he's based on Robbie Burns. Alternatively, perhaps she'd balance out the gender diversity in the Elite Four. Ultimately, literally everyone I asked about this responded by going with why not any pronouns. I was scared that people would just default to whatever they wanted to see, but I think the design is extremely androgynous in the subtle way, which was by design, since I didn't finalise the pronoun decision until after the design was made. I felt representing fighting through poetry was a fresh take, especially slam poetry being a thing, as well as the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me, which is used to try and convince you not to be hurt by hurtful words. Words can be hurtful though. Not that any real harm is intended by our friend Mackenzie, even though their name contains Ken, a Japanese word for fist, which is also the pronunciation of a Japanese word for sword, but he has a hammer. Because just a poet in warm colours didn't necessarily scream fighting. It can also act as a mic stand. Now, I loved how the final post-game boss in Johto is red, and when Black 2 White 2 came out, I was hoping for something similar. Alas, the original Protag is missing. Even their mother hasn't seen them for 2 years. Seriously, where are they? My personal headcanon is that they're dead. I thought within the 2 years since Agate and Obsidian, no one would have really defeated Andy or Sophie or Sammy, hence why they are the champion. Only one of them is, and it's randomized which one you get, and what customization options they have is also randomized. Unless you connect to a completed save file, then they have the same skin, hair, and eyes you gave them. The outfit will always remain the same though. They deserve a get-up fit for a champion after all. Traditional Scottish clothing, including a kilt, was necessary, and I felt the blue face paint referencing Celtic warriors also made for a good addition to the look. While I'm here, I might as well mention that I wanted to add different skin tones, as the key art from them in Agate and Obsidian originally didn't. I didn't think I needed to, as I thought when I said they were fully customizable, that would imply they were, but some people didn't get the memo. So this was for those people. One last thing is that they are wearing a ring. Just like Heather. No, they're not engaged. They're a little too young for that. But they're dating. They're wearing friendship rings. And yes, they're dating regardless of gender. It would make sense, as they got close during the events of Agate and Obsidian. As a bi guy myself, giving natural representation like this made me really happy. Time to explain those 3 new Pokemon. Or I guess 1 new species and 2 new forms. It's easier to explain Gemporum first. I did originally intend to make a Legends project for Croneo. I may still do, but nothing is in the works anymore. Gemporum was going to be explored there. I decided to move it here because I loved the idea. The lore written since the Legendaries video I released around 2 years ago was written with Gemporum in mind. So earlier this year I got its art done to match its description, since the ancient Pokemon of time is just meant to be Origin Dialga. This meant I made Gemporum match the vibe. It was also made of time crystals as seen on the timeline trio. Since Orpithegals was coloured differently to the other two, to try and resemble the mineral of Orpiment, said other two's crystals provided the colour. I explained that the golden colour was due to impurities, which is referenced in Gemporum's Shiny. Some of its other features are made to resemble the timeline trio, which was the artist's idea. Also, it doesn't have an eye, but just some shapes evoking eyes, since it is technically an Ultra Beast. So it has a funky eye situation to match the rest of them. Some may wonder if it's the Trio Master, but it's not. This This fulfills the role of the villain legendary, kinda like Kyurem, but definitely like Necrozma or Eternatus. Gemporum overall is based on the concept of time crystals, which are objects that don't just have a repeating structure like a crystal does, but also periodically repeats any changes to its structure. These were discovered thanks to the science of quantum physics, hence the name. It is a being made of literal crystals, hence gem, but also temporal due to it being a time elemental too, and quantum due to quantum physics. It also sounds grander, ending with that sound. Gemporum! Pokemon's enhanced versions have had a couple instances of Pokemon fusion. Kyurem and Necrozma fuse with other members of their trios, and Zygarde, despite not getting its own game, yet, has had its whole gimmick be formed around different cells fusing to create other forms. I wanted in on this if I was going to do this project. I mentioned earlier that Kyurem and Necrozma are the villain legendaries, but they are also the third member of their trios. Since those are different in Croneo, and the fact that I wanted this to be one version anyways, I thought it would be an interesting approach for them to fuse with one another. Move over, you two, you've already had your stories. So yeah, if you are hanging on the edge of your seat to find out about that other reason I refuse to say as to why Orpiteagle was normal flying, it's because it was always going to change types upon fusion. When the Rock Dragon Gemporum fuses with it, corrupting its very soul and being, hence the name of the form, it becomes a griffin-like being. This is because of the different body types lending themselves well to this idea. A fusion would also naturally make the body more crystalline than it already was, so changing normal to rock made sense for that reason. People wanted Orpiteagle to be a rock type anyways, because they ignored my reasons in the original video, but still, it's a rock type now, in this form. When Gemporum leaves its body, the crystals are now purified. I kinda always had the idea that it could be related to phoenixes as it gets reborn. There's smoke in its design to thematically parallel this, and Celtic rituals use smoke as well. Not that I needed to explain why a golden eagle, the Scottish national bird, is Scottish. Orpiteagle's crystals are now purple, like the others in its trio. The original always kinda looked out of place, but now it doesn't really. This is also helped by its now grey body, the in-between of the black and white of Mebicordian and Priturate respectively. It also inherits Gemporum's dragon typing, to signify that it's in its ultimate form. Also, dragons are associated with smoke too, so it works out. And that's it! The final Croneo video, excluding marathons of course, will be the recap of every single Croneomon to cap off the series. It's been a journey. Special thanks to all the artists, and thank you all for watching.